Welcome. Be sure to like and subscribe for more scary stories, or I will come for you. I'd like to thank Ryan Baker, Chrissy Bowman, and Bree Bolton for rejoining the Curator's Disciples. Your viewership is very much appreciated. If anyone would like early access to my latest stories and an ad-free listening experience, consider becoming one of the Curator's Disciples. The link is in the description below. Finally, a reminder that all stories are available on my podcast. The Curator, Dark Web Horror Anthology, is available on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Without further ado, today's story, I Am the Dark Web, by the Curator. My name no longer matters. The federal agencies did not simply erase it. They overwrote it with a zero-day exploit that rewrote block devices at the firmware level. Every birth record, every government department photograph, every double U2 form, every parking ticket from 2003, all of it vanished. The only trace that remains is a single, heavily redacted line in a secure, compartmented information facility vault at Fort Meade. It reads, Subject Re-designated Ghost 01, Threat Level Indigo, do not attempt contact. The paper files smell as if someone melted circuit boards on top of them, because the courier who delivered the last physical copy dropped a cigarette on the stack in 2017, and no one dared throw anything away. My fingerprints are smooth ridges of scar tissue now, glossy and hairless, and they ache when the barometric pressure falls the same way an old battlefield injury aches. A surgeon in the ironbound district of Newark spent 12 hours, drank a fifth of wild turkey, and inhaled 3 bags of black tar heroin to turn my face into something that could not match any old yearbook photograph. I paid him by leaving an envelope full of hundreds on his kitchen table while he nodded out in his own vomit. Even the headstone that claims Elias Crow, beloved son, is a falsehood. The grave plot is empty, and the coffin beneath it contains only shattered hard drives and the ashes of the last laptop I ever owned under my real name. There was a time before all of this. Before Ghost 01. Before the barrels, the crews, the rivers of acid, and the sound of bones softening in chemical darkness. There was a time when I still believed my future could be made of light. I was born in Towson in 1975, back when the shopping malls had orange carpets and my mother still believed the world could be navigated with enough kindness. My father was not a soldier or a criminal or someone who ran from responsibility. He was a lineman for Baltimore Gas and Electric, a quiet man with thick wrists and a laugh that made strangers feel welcome. He died when I was 7 years old. He was electrocuted during an August storm while repairing a line near Pikesville. Witnesses said the arc flash was so bright that neighbors thought it was lightning. The company gave my mother a payout, but it dissolved almost immediately into medical bills and rental deposits on mold-infested apartments. My mother tried her best. She worked as many as 3 jobs at once, sometimes cleaning rooms at a Travelodge, sometimes doing laundry at Franklin Square Hospital, and sometimes working overnight shifts at a Royal Farms. She kept my father's flannel shirts in a cardboard box that always smelled like dust and cheap aftershave. When I could not sleep, I would bury my face in them to pretend he was still there. I had very few friends as a child. I had a stutter so severe that teachers sometimes thought I was having a seizure. Other children imitated the stutter until I stopped speaking almost entirely, except when my mother was the only one listening. Computers changed everything. In 1989, my mother bought a thrift store IBM PS2 model for $45. The screen had a cracked corner, and the keys were the yellow of old teeth, but the machine still booted. The first time I heard the power on self-test beep, it felt like someone had opened a door out of the suffocating world I lived in. I taught myself BASIC from library books I stole from the Towson branch. After that, I learned the C programming language, then assembly. The machine became my voice, my armor, and my religion. While other kids snuck beer under bleachers, I wrote terminate and stay resident programs that hooked keyboard into RUPs. When they kissed each other, clumsily behind gymnasiums, I read request for comment documents the way scholars read scripture. I was not special. I was simply obsessed. Loneliness can be an incredible fuel source. I was admitted to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County on a scholarship for exceptional aptitude in computer science. I never fit in socially. The other students talked about internships at Cisco and carried access badge lanyards proudly. I spent my nights working at a strip mall Radio Shack fixing VCR players for men who smelled like cigarette ash and old carpet. Yet online, on early message boards, on Usenet, on IRC servers, I became someone. My handle at the time was Nullsig. I wrote code with a purity that bordered on religious mania. I believed cryptography was going to save the world. Life has a talent for crushing idealists. During my junior year, my mother developed breast cancer. I dropped out to take care of her, telling myself I would return. That never happened. I drifted from job to job. A few months at Geek Squad, an 8-day internship at a defense contractor, 2 months at a cybersecurity startup run by a man who said the word synergy without irony. I was gifted at code but hopeless in offices that smelled like halogen-lit morgues. By my late 20s, I was already withdrawing from the world. I wrote open source patches under an ever-rotating list of usernames, slept during the day, and lived on caffeine and whatever I could find in clearance bins at Safeway. When the cancer returned, this time as pancreatic cancer, I unraveled completely. My life shrank into 2 points of focus: my mother's diminishing body and the blue glow of my monitors. Everything else vanished. By the time I was 34, I was still Elias Crow, living in the damp basement of a foreclosed split-level house on Sulphur Spring Road in Arbutus, Maryland. The house had been bank-owned for so long that mail still arrived addressed to 3 previous owners, all of whom were either dead or in prison. I slept on a futon that smelled like mildew, burnt solder, and stale sweat. The only illumination came from 3 mismatched monitors and the orange glow of a ceramic space heater that I kept pointed at my feet because the oil tank had been empty since the second Bush administration. My mother lay in room 312B at the Keswick Multicare Center, her skin turning the color of old parchment as pancreatic cancer hollowed her out. The bills arrived in thick manila envelopes stamped final notice in a red ink so bright it seemed wet. I paid what I could from occasional bug bounty payouts and remote penetration testing jobs that allowed me to work from home wearing sweatpants with holes in the crotch. Online, I was Crowbar, a harmless poster who once wrote a 12-paragraph apology because a proof-of-concept exploit accidentally bricked someone's Linksys router in 2007. Someone who wrote 4,000-word essays about why curve 25519 was the most elegant mathematical object since Riemann surfaces. Someone who spent 72 consecutive hours helping a 15-year-old boy in Doha bypass Qatar's firewall so he could watch Deep Space Nine without risking prison time for moral corruption. Seeing GCC compile with 0 errors and 0 warnings gave me a greater rush than any human intimacy ever had. My dinners were usually 2 microwaved bean burritos eaten over the sink, so I did not have to wash dishes. I was not violent. I flinched when anyone raised their voice, but I believed, with the same stubbornness as a medieval monk illuminating manuscripts while plague swept through villages, that if we routed packets cleverly enough, then secrets could still exist in an age of total surveillance. The network I had imagined, which I called Anamai, lived in my mind long before it had a name. It would use volunteer middle relays and entry guards selected by a verifiable random function lottery every 10 minutes. It would use pluggable transports that mutated like viral organisms to bypass national firewalls, and hidden services with 56-character onion addresses derived from ed25519 public keys. It would be a structure where no single entity, not even the original creator, could reveal a user's identity unless every relay on Earth acted in perfect collusion. It felt like building a cathedral out of mathematics. Each circuit, a stained glass window made of layered encryption. Cathedral builders are always broken first. In February 2009, Baltimore received 31 inches of snow in one weekend, and the city shut down for 4 days. I had already been evicted again. This time, the landlord changed the locks while I was at Rite Aid picking up my mother's liquid morphine. I moved into a 10 by 15 climate-controlled storage unit at a public storage facility off Route 40. I locked the padlock from the inside and kept myself warm with an Army surplus sleeping bag and a Coleman stove battered during Desert Storm. I kept a worn ThinkPad X200S on top of a milk crate. I ran a single orange extension cord under the roll-up door to an outdoor outlet that I had hot-wired using a paper clip and luck. I pirated Comcast from the dentist next door and bounced it through several proxy hops just to check email. That is when the Russians arrived. 2 matte black Escalades with New York license plates slid noiselessly into the lot at 3:12 a.m., headlights turned off. 4 men stepped out wearing long black wool coats with no hats despite the cold. Prison tattoos crawled up their necks like invasive vines. They had onion domes, stars, and portraits of the Madonna and Child. The one in front had a gold canine tooth that flashed every time he exhaled steam. His voice sounded like gravel, soaked in honey and battery acid. He introduced himself only as Roman Ivanich. He knew my real name, my mother's room number, and the exact balance of $87,412.63 that we owed for her medical care. They wanted a private overlay network, not Tor, which they said was too slow and too heavily monitored. They wanted something custom-built and invitation only. Their goal was to move Ukrainian students, Afghan heroin packaged as medical supplies, and stolen catalytic converters stacked on pallets. They offered $50,000 in cash up front and another $50,000 after their first shipment passed through customs without a dog alerting on it. The money sat inside a blue Stop and Shop bag. The rubber-banded stacks still carried the smell of cocaine dust and Victoria's Secret body spray. I told Roman Ivanich, in a quiet and polite tone, to go eat something foul and perish. 43 hours after I told Roman Ivanich to eat something foul and die, my prepaid phone vibrated on the concrete floor. It was 3:37 a.m. The message contained a single video file, 37 seconds long. It showed my mother, skeletal and jaundiced, her oxygen mask ripped away while a tattooed forearm the size of my thigh pressed a pillow down across her face. Her robin-egg blue fingernails clawed weakly but could not find any purchase. I heard a wet, rattling sound, then her faint voice saying my name. She gasped, "Eli, Eli." The men lifted the pillow for 4 seconds. She drew air like a drowning animal, screamed my name once, and the pillow went back down. The timestamp showed the clip had been filmed 12 minutes earlier. I built their crippled network in 9 straight days without sleep, living entirely on caffeinated drinks and the sound of my own teeth grinding. I padded every data packet to 4,096 bytes. I introduced deliberate timing channels. I embedded a 4,096-bit RSA backdoor that only I could open. They paid me, and she lived for 6 more months, months filled with agony. She eventually died on a Tuesday in August, whispering about a garden we never had. 3 weeks later, I published the real version of the code. I pushed it to a mirror at the University of Reykjavik and to a dead image board that only a dozen people still visited. I titled it, "Onion Routing, Done Right, No Compromises." I left no signature and wrote no manifesto. I simply posted a tarball and ASHA 256 sum. Relay nodes came online within hours. Then the Albanians found me. They were younger, louder, and wired on cocaine and the kind of money that makes people reckless. Their messenger confronted me inside a trap house on East Madison Street in the Kensington section of Philadelphia. The walls were stained from someone cooking drugs, and feral cats screamed inside the walls at night. The man had filed his teeth to sharp points, and the pistol tucked into his waistband looked like a fashion accessory. He made the same offer as the Russians, but with worse manners. I said no. He left without another word. A FedEx envelope arrived 2 days later. When I opened it, a woman's index finger slid into my palm. The nail was manicured and painted a pale pink. She wore a silver mood ring. A small sticky note inside read, "Practice. Next time, someone you love." 4 days later, a styrofoam cooler appeared outside my new abandoned building in Brewery Town. Dry ice smoke curled up when I opened the lid. Inside was another finger, this one older, with an arthritic knuckle and a Bryn Mawr class ring from 1978. A photocopy of the recommendation letter Dr. Miriam Klein had written for me was inside the cooler. It was stained with freckles of dried blood that speckled her elegant handwriting. That night, I went to Home Depot and purchased 6 55-gallon drums, 2,000 pounds of sodium hydroxide pellets, and every gallon of muriatic acid they had in stock. I did not remember driving home. The first kill happened almost by accident. Dato Takaya, known as Dato the Georgian, had a thick neck and wore too much Drakkar Noir. I arranged a fake dead drop inside an abandoned Crayola factory off Oregon Avenue. The windows had been painted black years earlier, but the air still held a faint sweetness from decades of melted wax. I waited behind a concrete pillar with a masonry trowel in my hand. When he stepped past, I swung. The flat side of the trowel struck just above his ear. The sound reminded me of stepping on a rotted pumpkin. It was hollow and wet and final. He collapsed immediately and his bladder emptied onto the concrete. For a moment, as he hit the floor, I saw something else entirely. I saw my father's steel-toed boots slipping on a rain-soaked utility pole on the night he died. I heard the dull, wet impact that the coroner later described to us. When Dato fell, it did not sound like a criminal dying. It sounded like my father falling from a pole in a storm. I even heard my mother screaming into a kitchen towel to keep me from hearing the sound. I grabbed Dato by the ankles and dragged him across the concrete. His heels left streaks behind him. I pulled him to the drum I had prepared earlier that afternoon. The body slid inside with a hollow glorp. I poured 70% hydrochloric acid slowly over him. His skin blanched, then turned the color of parchment, then peeled away in long translucent ribbons. His muscles became the unnatural pink of frozen supermarket shrimp. His gold canine tooth floated for several minutes before the enamel broke down. His eyes dissolved last. They burst with two soft popping sounds that released a glistening jelly. The smell was a mixture of burnt hair, copper pennies, and something sugary that made my stomach twist. I vomited into the drum, and the acid consumed that too. The steam from the acid fogged my glasses in the same pattern that my mother's breath once fogged the hospice window when she asked me if she was dying. Her thin, cold fingers left streaks on that glass, streaks that looked exactly like the droplets of liquefied fat running down the rim of the drum. I told her she would be all right. I lied, and I lied like someone who was already half dead himself. 1 kill became 5. 5 became 12. Soon I was eliminating entire crews. The Albanians finally sent 8 armed men to a warehouse that I had leased using 3 overlapping shell corporations registered in Delaware. I spent 7 days turning the structure into a kill box. I installed infrared beams and magnetic locks that engaged on 30-second timers. I mounted 4 propane heaters on the ceiling, each of them capable of producing 50,000 British thermal units. Outside the building, I parked a 3,000-gallon tanker filled with 98% sulfuric acid and rigged it with a remote solenoid valve. They breached the warehouse at 2:14 a.m. By 2:17 a.m., every exit had locked. I watched them on 4 grainy infrared camera feeds while eating cold pepperoni pizza that was older than some of the men. I opened the valve and released the mist. The sulfuric acid rolled along the floor in a thick blanket. Their clothes caught fire first. Their skin blistered into enormous sacs that burst open. One man attempted to climb the wall. His fingernails peeled off with wet, snapping sounds, and his face slid down the concrete in ribbons. Another man jammed his thumbs into his own eye sockets in a futile attempt to stop the burning. They remained upright longer than anyone should have. Their bones softened like warmed plastic. They collapsed into a heap that sounded like water balloons thrown onto pavement. Teeth floated on the liquid like white mint candies in a bowl of pink milk. No amount of bleach has ever removed the stains from that concrete floor. As they screamed, a familiar sound layered itself over the chaos. I heard my mother's thin, exhausted cries from her last months in room 312B. This memory did not come from the pillow video. It was from before that. She would wake in the night, clutching her ribs, and whisper, "It burns, Eli." It burns as the cancer hollowed her from the inside. The Albanians kicked and writhed in the acid mist in exactly the same way she thrashed when the morphine drip malfunctioned. Trauma does not follow logic. The mind simply throws pain into whatever crack it can find. The Italians were even worse because they believed cruelty was a tradition that must be upheld. They kidnapped John Park, known online as T_Otter. He was a 26-year-old from Flushing in Queens. He wrote the best ring signature patches I had ever seen. We had never met in person, but we had spent countless nights on internet relay chat, discussing zero-knowledge proofs and whether installing backdoors into one's own code was a sin that the universe punished. The Italians sent me 10 video files. They burned him with cigarettes until his skin turned black. They used a broken Chianti bottle. They pulled his teeth out with pliers. I watched the footage once. Then I wrote a worm that searched for and erased those files from every device I ever owned. I found Salvatore Rizzo, known as Sally Burns, inside the whale room of the Borgata. He was drunk on 40-year-old cognac and the nostalgia of his own reputation. He was surrounded by 6 made men. I added a single drop of tetrodotoxin, distilled from pufferfish livers, into the decanter. 10 minutes later, all of them were paralyzed but conscious. Their eyes were wide and terrified. There was an abandoned meatpacking plant in Camden that still had overhead rails, floor drains, and industrial bandsaws connected to 3-phase power. I paid $11,000 in cash to use the facility and asked no questions. I began with Sally. I made a clean incision down the midline with a scalpel. His ribs cracked when I spread them open using bolt cutters. His intestines spilled out warm and purple-gray in the cold air. I fed them into a grinder, 1 loop at a time while he watched, unable to move. The sound produced by the grinder was a horrifying mix of tearing canvas, shattering lobster shells, and microwave popcorn. While I worked, a memory intruded. I remembered June laughing in an internet relay chat room at 3 in the morning and typing, "Be right back," making ramen before explaining a proof that made me, for a brief moment, feel hopeful about human beings. He once mentioned that his mother packed him rice cakes on exam days for good luck. When I cracked Sally's ribs, I thought of June's mother. I imagined her reading a news headline one day and grieving without ever knowing her son died screaming in a dark warehouse because he wrote code too well. The grinder drowned everything else, but grief vibrates deep inside the marrow, and you cannot silence it. I placed the remaining men into a vat filled with 180-degree lye. They screamed the instant their skin made contact with the liquid, producing a high-pitched tearing sound that did not seem human. Their flesh liquefied and peeled away in translucent sheets. One man attempted to climb out of the vat, but his hands slipped on the liquid fat that poured from his own body. The smell lingered on my clothes for weeks, until I eventually burned them. I lost track of the number of kills after 45. I eliminated entire crews. I found and killed a Neapolitan underboss who tried to seize control after the chaos began. I stacked barrels 3 deep in forgotten Conrail tunnels below the 30th Street station in Philadelphia. They bubbled quietly while high-speed trains roared overhead. The criminal families blamed one another for the losses and tore themselves apart, never suspecting a single person was responsible. Every time I lowered a body into a drum, I remembered lowering my mother's hospice bed on the night she asked me to help her feel closer to the ground. She said the position made her less afraid. Every corpse that dissolved into alkaline soup reminded me of her soft voice saying, "Do not let them hurt you, Eli." It was too late. They already had. By the summer of 2011, the real network had grown to more than 4,200 relay nodes. Hidden services spread across it like mushrooms emerging after rainfall. Silk Road launched in February of that year, but I had been hosting leak sites, anonymous libraries, and dead-drop locations for more than a year before that. My code had become feral by then. It propagated, mutated, and adapted in ways even I no longer fully controlled. It could not be killed without severing the global internet itself from the physical world. Law enforcement never found most of the bodies. Strong alkali and strong acid, combined with time, turned flesh into soap and fragmented memory. Interpol collected whatever pieces they could. They found a gold-crowned molar fused into a Baltimore storm drain grate. They found half a titanium hip drifting in the Schuylkill River. They found a St. Jude medallion melted into a lump of bone. They eventually labeled the scattered discoveries as the Philadelphia renderings and blamed them on cartel wars. that never actually happen. I write this now because the network has grown into a city, a place larger than any empire those gold-toothed men ever dreamed they could build. It contains horrors, without question. Red room streams, blueprints for weapons, other things I refuse to describe. But every hour, it also saves someone who has nowhere else to turn. It shelters a Ogyur poet in Urumqi. It protects a girl in Tehran who dares to show her hair. It gives a kid in Arkansas enough anonymity to contact a crisis hotline from a locked bathroom. It lets a Syrian doctor upload proof of chlorine attacks while artillery whistles overhead. If someone with prison tattoos and a fresh cryptocurrency wallet corners you someday and makes the same offer they once made to me and smiles like he has invented the future, then I want you to remember what it cost me to learn the truth. First, acid does not care about your family's crest, your criminal connections, or how many soldiers you can call within 5 minutes. Second, an idealist who has watched his mother die beneath a pillow and who still believes in something is the most dangerous kind of person alive. Third, the barrels never fill. They never sleep. They never forgive. To every mother who is still waiting for a son who vanished in 2010, I am sorry. There was no other path left for me. To every aging crime boss who wonders why his kingdom crumbled into dust, your soldiers became the rebar and the foundation of the world that came after yours. I am the relay that drops your packets when the sensor knocks. I am the hidden service that answers when no one else will. I am the silence after you press the enter key, the breath that fills the space between your keystrokes. And somewhere along the way, the world gave the network a name. It did not happen quickly. In the beginning, people simply called it Onionland, or the Onion Space, or just the network. Journalists wrote cautious articles about hidden services on the Tor platform. Academics described it with the dry phrase anonymous overlay network. Law enforcement officers in their briefings called it the Tor dark net. Then, in the later part of 2012, a new phrase slipped into the public vocabulary. Dark web. I remember the moment it became permanent. In January 2013, a junior producer at the cable news network was preparing a segment about recent Silk Road seizures. The graphics department needed a catchy caption. Deep web had already become a common term, so the producer typed in the newsroom's internal chat, "What is the opposite of the regular web?" Someone, half joking, replied, "The dark web." The graphics team created a banner with those words in blood-red letters under the silhouette of a hooded figure. The anchor read the caption without hesitation. Social media spread the term like wildfire. Within 2 days, every cable channel, tabloid, and politician eager for a headline was using it. The phrase was sensational, dramatic, and simple. It allowed every commentator to describe an entire universe with a single label. Drug markets, hitman scams, child abuse rings, stolen credit card dumps. All of them were lumped together under that two-word name. No one cared that most of the traffic was still whistleblowers, political dissidents, and people reading forbidden books. The name was too appealing to ignore, and it spread like a contagion. By 2014, elderly people who still referred to their modem as the AOL were using the phrase dark web. Politicians shouted the words in Sunday interviews. Parents warned their children about it, the way older generations had once warned about satanic conspiracies or razor blades hidden inside Halloween candy. The term became the centerpiece of a moral panic that could fit neatly onto a bumper sticker. The irony, the bitter and enduring irony, is that I never intended any of it to be dark. I built it to be a place where light could hide. I built it for the woman in Riyadh who wanted to show her hair without being beaten. I built it for the Chinese citizen who wanted to upload a video of tanks without being taken from his home during the night. I built it for the gay teenager in Uganda who needed a sentence, any sentence at all, that could keep him alive another day. I built it as a place where light could survive the bright, predatory eyes of the clearnet. But names are incantations. Say something long enough and it becomes truth. They named it the dark web. So it became dark. The monsters moved in because rent was cheap and the authorities were blind. The good people stayed because there was nowhere else for them to go. The name clung to all of us like tar. So let the world keep its name. Let them call it the dark. Let them believe they understand the meaning of darkness. I know what real darkness is. I boiled it in 55-gallon drums and poured it down storm drains. I listened to it scream in languages I could not understand. I smelled its stench for months, no matter how hard I scrubbed myself. The network itself is not dark. It is simply the last place where the lights are allowed to go out when the monsters draw near. See you on the far side of the onion. Bring your own light. I burned mine out long ago. This is the Curator. I hope you've enjoyed today's scary story. Until next time.